Mr. Harris, the scans confirm what we were concerned about. The mass is malignant.
God.
I know this is a lot to take in. We'll go through the next steps together.
Come here.
Dad?
I drove straight here. Needed you to see this.
Oh my God.
The doctor's verdict slammed into me like a wrecking ball. Stage 4 lymphoma. 6 months at most without intervention, Patricia. Those words were still echoing in my skull when I drove straight to my daughter's law firm that very afternoon, diagnosis papers trembling in my grip. The moment Rachel glanced up from her laptop and caught the terror in my expression, something shifted in her face. This wasn't going to be one of our regular catch-up lunches. If you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from. Dr. Kim's examination room had felt suffocating, the overhead lights too harsh as she walked me through how the malignancy had already invaded my entire lymphatic system. "We need aggressive treatment starting immediately," she'd explained, her tone mixing clinical precision with genuine compassion. "There's an advanced protocol that runs $92,000, but honestly, it's your only real chance." Sitting in that cold medical office, my mind kept replaying the years I'd spent raising Rachel by myself after her mother walked out when she was just 10. I'd pulled triple shifts managing a nursing home just to afford her college and law school tuition. Now, at 64, I was facing the fight of my life, and I needed her like never before. Rachel's firm occupied an entire floor in one of those modern steel and glass towers downtown. Her assistant looked genuinely shocked when I showed up unannounced. I'd always called ahead before. When I stepped into her massive corner office, she was buried in case files, her blonde hair pulled back perfectly, dressed in a power suit that probably cost what I earned in a month. "Dad, what's going on?" She read the panic instantly. I laid the medical folder on her polished desk. "It's cancer, Rachel. Aggressive. Without treatment, I've got half a year, maybe less." Every ounce of color vanished from her complexion as she scanned through the documents. "Oh my God, Dad, I'm so sorry." She rushed around her desk and pulled me into an embrace, and for just that moment, I felt the relief of having my daughter there to catch me. "Insurance won't touch it," I continued, fighting to keep my voice steady. "It's experimental, but it's literally my only shot. $92,000. Rachel returned to her executive chair, and I watched her professional mask snap back into position. "That's a significant amount, Dad." Something in her inflection made my chest tighten. "I'm aware, but Rachel, I'm asking you to help save my life." She reclined back, fingers forming that familiar steeple position, the same gesture she'd used as a kid when she was about to make an excuse. "Let me discuss this with Marcus. We'll need to evaluate what's possible." Marcus, her husband of 4 years, who'd never warmed to me much. The guy who'd convinced her they should move to the suburbs to minimize family interference. That should have been my warning sign, but desperation makes you ignore red flags, doesn't it? I left her office believing that surely my only daughter wouldn't abandon her father when he was staring down death. After everything I'd sacrificed, raising her alone, surely that had to count for something. I was about to discover exactly what it counted for. 5 days passed before Rachel finally called me back, instead of visiting, which should have told me everything. Her tone sounded rehearsed, mechanical, like she was reading from talking points Marcus had drafted. "Dad, we've been analyzing your situation." "Our situation," I gently corrected. "Rachel, this is about your father surviving cancer." An uncomfortable silence filled the line before she cleared her throat. "Right, absolutely. It's just that 92,000 represents our entire safety net. Marcus is concerned about what happens if we face our own emergency down the road." I stared through my apartment window at the rooftop garden I'd been maintaining for 20 years, wondering if I'd ever see autumn leaves again. "Rachel, I'm not asking you to go into debt. I know you both have the resources." She'd just been promoted to senior partner, and Marcus worked in pharmaceutical executive sales. They were far from struggling. It's more complicated than that, Dad. We've got obligations, commitments, the mortgage, Marcus's investment properties. We're planning to expand the family. Each excuse felt like another blade sliding between my ribs. I raised you alone after your mother abandoned us with absolutely nothing, I said softly. I worked myself to exhaustion putting you through law school. Never once did I ask for repayment. That was your decision, she responded, and I could hear Marcus's cold influence in those words. You chose to have a child. You chose to support my education. I never requested any of that. The phone nearly slipped through my fingers. This couldn't be my daughter speaking. Not the little girl I'd comforted through nightmares, celebrated with at every dance recital, hugged at her law school graduation. Rachel, I'm literally asking for my life. $92,000 to live. My voice cracked despite every effort to stay composed. I'm sure there are alternatives, she said quickly, as if that solved everything. Government programs, charitable foundations, extended payment arrangements. You don't have to put this burden on us. Burden. That's what I'd become to my own child. After we disconnected, I sat in my silent apartment and felt something fundamental shatter inside me. The daughter I'd raised, the woman I'd been so proud of, had never really existed at all. I'd been loving a fantasy. I spent the following 48 hours researching every conceivable option, contacting medical charities, exploring loans with devastating interest rates. Every avenue led nowhere or had waiting periods that stretched far beyond my prognosis. Time I absolutely didn't have. Then I saw Marcus's social media post, and suddenly everything became crystal clear. You're invited to celebrate Marcus Chen's milestone 40th birthday celebration. The digital invitation was elegant, obviously professionally designed, photographed against a backdrop of black orchids. Join us for an extraordinary evening at the Grandview Plaza Ballroom, featuring gourmet cuisine, live entertainment, and exclusive surprises. Formal attire required. Contribution per couple, $350. I scrolled through the responses, watching colleagues and friends enthusiastically confirm their attendance. Can't wait, this is going to be incredible. Marcus deserves this. My hands were shaking as I started calculating. If they were charging couples $350, and I counted 53 confirmed guests already, that meant, I grabbed my calculator to verify, over $18,000 just from ticket revenue for a birthday party. But that was just the beginning. I clicked through Marcus's Instagram stories documenting the party preparation, and each post felt like another punch to my gut. The custom lighting installation, $22,000. The 7-course tasting menu from that celebrity chef, $45,000. The jazz ensemble he'd flown in from New Orleans, $32,000. The designer watch he'd purchased as his own birthday gift, $12,000. I screenshotted everything, my cancer-weakened hands trembling with pure rage. When I tallied the final number, I literally felt nauseous. $275,000 for one night, celebrating one person's birthday, while I was preparing to die because I couldn't afford $92,000 for treatment. The irony would have been darkly hilarious if it weren't so absolutely crushing. Rachel, who couldn't find $92,000 to save her father's life, had somehow located $275,000 to throw her husband a party that would last 6 hours. I called her that evening, forcing my voice to sound casual. Rachel, I noticed Marcus's birthday invitation. Looks spectacular. A brief hesitation. Oh, yeah. It's going to be really special. Marcus has been coordinating everything for months. Must be incredibly expensive, I commented lightly. The Grandview Plaza, that catering level. All those premium details. Well, you know Marcus. He believes in doing things properly. She sounded uncomfortable, probably sensing where this was heading. What's the total cost, Rachel? The silence stretched so long, I wondered if the call had dropped. Dad, that's really not your concern. Humor me. I'm curious what properly costs these days. Another long pause. It's a milestone birthday. Marcus only turns 40 once. Rachel, my voice hardened. What's the total? Around 250, she mumbled. Give or take. The confirmation hit me like a physical assault, even though I'd already done the math myself. 275,000 for a birthday party, but you can't locate 92,000 to save my life. Those are completely separate situations, Dad. The party is an investment in our professional network, our client relationships. An investment. My daughter was calling her husband's birthday extravaganza an investment while her father faced death. I understand completely, I said quietly. Thank you for clarifying your priorities. After hanging up, I sat in complete darkness and made a decision that would transform everything. If Rachel thought I was going to die quietly and disappear conveniently, she was absolutely wrong. I refinanced my condo the very next morning. 30 years of payments, 40 years of memories, and I signed documents risking it all for a chance to survive. The loan officer, a sympathetic gentleman named Mr. Torres, seemed deeply concerned by my urgency. Mr. Sullivan, are you certain about this? At your stage of life, there might be better financial structures. I need the full amount immediately, I told him firmly. Every penny. He processed everything with professional courtesy, but I noticed him glancing at me with worry. When I walked out carrying a certified check for $98,000, my hands were steady for the first time in weeks. The oncology billing department processed my payment without hesitation. Dr. Kim scheduled my first infusion for that coming Thursday. I'm really proud of you for fighting this, Patrick, she said, reviewing my treatment plan. This protocol shows a 78% success rate. Those are strong odds. Strong odds purchased with everything I owned. But driving home, I felt something I hadn't experienced since hearing my diagnosis. Hope. Maybe I would survive. Maybe I'd see another spring, another holiday season, another year of life that Rachel had been prepared to let slip away. That weekend, social media erupted with photographs from Marcus's birthday spectacle. I scrolled through hundreds of images. Marcus in his custom tuxedo, the elaborate ice bar shaped like a grand piano, the multi-tiered cake that was apparently a replica of their house, complete with edible landscaping. Rachel looked radiant in her designer gown, her arm wrapped around her beaming husband. In one image, she was giving a toast, champagne flute raised, genuine tears streaming down her face. The caption read, "My wife's speech about how I deserve the absolute best brought everyone to tears. I deserve the absolute best." I screenshotted that photo and caption, adding it to my growing archive of evidence. Evidence of what my life was worth to my daughter. Less than her husband's birthday celebration. The chemotherapy started that Thursday. The treatment was absolutely brutal, leaving me violently ill and completely exhausted, but I endured it with fierce determination. Each infusion cost thousands of dollars. Money that had once represented the security of my home, my retirement, my peace of mind. But I was alive. Every morning I opened my eyes was a morning Rachel hadn't expected. A morning she'd been willing to sacrifice for her husband's social media moments. During recovery periods between treatments, I began formulating plans. If I survived this cancer, and the statistics suggested I would, I had some critical decisions to make about my relationship with my daughter. Starting with whether I wanted any relationship at all. 8 months later, Dr. Kim delivered the news I'd been desperately praying for. Complete remission. The cancer had been eradicated by the treatment I'd nearly died to afford. I sat in her office, healthy and cancer-free, thinking about the daughter who'd never once called to check my progress. Never visited during chemo. Never acknowledged that her father had fought for survival completely alone. "You beat it, Patrick," Dr. Kim said, authentic warmth in her expression. "How are you feeling?" Grateful, furious, relieved, devastated. But mostly, I felt liberated, free from the illusion that family automatically meant unconditional love, free from any obligation to maintain relationships with people who considered me disposable. "I feel like I've been given a second chance," I told her, and I was determined to use it wisely. The first thing I did was sell my condo. The refinancing I'd taken for treatment meant I had minimal equity remaining, but the sale provided enough to start fresh somewhere new. Somewhere Rachel wouldn't think to search for me. I chose Austin, Texas, partly for the warm climate that would support my recovering health, and partly because it was 2,000 miles from the life I was leaving behind. I found a modest apartment in an active senior community. Nothing extravagant, but it was mine, and it was paid for. The second thing I did was completely vanish. I changed my number, deleted all social media accounts, and left zero forwarding information. When Rachel's assistant called my old line, she'd hear it was disconnected. When she drove past my old building, she'd see strangers living in my former home. For the first time in my adult life, I was completely invisible to the people who were supposed to love me. It was absolutely terrifying and incredibly liberating simultaneously. I spent my first month in Austin sleeping in, reading books I'd never had time for, and walking the nature trails around my new neighborhood. Gradually, I began forming friendships with other residents. Helen, a retired nurse whose daughter had moved to Australia. Thomas, a former engineer who divorced his wife after discovering her affair. Jennifer, whose son rarely visited despite living nearby. We were a community of the abandoned, the forgotten, the discarded, and we were creating something meaningful together. During my second month, Thomas mentioned he needed help managing finances for his small real estate consulting practice. "I can't offer much," he said over coffee in the community lounge, "but it would be legitimate work." I'd always had a gift for numbers, and I needed something to occupy my mind beyond survival. What began as part-time bookkeeping evolved into investment consultation, which led to managing retirement portfolios for other residents. Turns out, when you're no longer worried about impressing anyone or maintaining toxic family relationships, you can take smart risks. Calculated risks that, as it happened, paid off brilliantly with money that was genuinely mine to invest. By month 8, I was earning more than I'd ever made in my previous life, and Rachel had absolutely no idea I was alive, let alone thriving. 18 months after vanishing, I was wealthier than I'd ever imagined possible. The investment portfolio I'd built for myself and my clients had grown by 400%, thanks to strategic positions in biotech startups and a calculated bet on sustainable energy companies. I'd also launched a small wealth management consultancy, helping other seniors navigate retirement investments and legacy planning. Referrals had brought me clients from across Austin, and I was completely booked with people seeking advice from someone who understood what rebuilding later in life actually meant. My small apartment had been replaced by a beautiful house in an upscale neighborhood, complete with a garden where I could grow the herbs I'd missed. I had a new car, a solid friend network, and a rapidly growing bank account that proved I was far from the helpless burden Rachel had considered me. But the most satisfying transformation was internal. The man who'd begged his daughter for his life was gone, replaced by someone harder, wiser, and completely self-sufficient. I'd learned to trust my own judgment, to recognize my own value, and to never again give anyone the power to determine whether I lived or died. My cancer remained in remission, my health was outstanding, and my future was entirely under my control. I'd built a life Rachel couldn't touch, couldn't influence, and didn't even know existed. Every morning, I woke grateful for the second chance I'd given myself, the chance she'd been unwilling to provide. Late at night sometimes, I wondered if she ever thought about me. Did she assume I'd died quietly, as she'd apparently hoped? Did she feel any guilt about refusing to help? Did she even remember she had a father? But those thoughts came less frequently now. I was too busy living the life I'd saved to spend time thinking about the daughter who'd been willing to let me die. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt, and some relationships, once you see them clearly, aren't worth saving. I was about to discover that Rachel had learned that lesson too, but from the opposite side. 7 years after I'd disappeared from Rachel's life, she found me through the one thing I couldn't hide: success. My wealth management firm had been featured in Austin Business Monthly, complete with a photo of me standing in front of my downtown office. The article called me the retirement investment guru and detailed how I'd transformed struggling retirees into confident investors. If you're finding value in this story, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I was reviewing client portfolios when my office manager, Diana, buzzed my desk. "Mr. Sullivan, there's a woman here claiming to be your daughter. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's extremely persistent." My pen froze mid-signature. After 7 years of silence, Rachel had tracked me down. "Does she look desperate?" I asked, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. Diana hesitated. "Yes, sir. She looks like she's been through absolute hell." "Perfect. Send her in." I straightened my shoulders and prepared to meet the stranger who used to be my daughter. Rachel walked into my office, and I barely recognized her. The confident attorney in designer suits had been replaced by a hollow-eyed woman in wrinkled clothes that hung loose on her diminished frame. Her hair was longer, unkempt, and there were deep lines around her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and overwhelming stress. "Hello, Rachel." I didn't stand, didn't offer her a seat. I simply waited. She stood in the doorway, staring at me like I was an apparition. "Dad. God." We all thought you were dead." "Dead," I repeated flatly. "How dramatic. As you can see, I'm very much alive." She moved closer to my desk, her eyes taking in the expensive furnishings, the framed certifications on the walls, the panoramic view of downtown Austin through floor-to-ceiling windows. This is unbelievable. You look incredible, healthy, successful, cancer-free for 6.5 years," I said matter-of-factly. "The treatment worked perfectly. Of course, you wouldn't know that since you never called to check." Her face crumpled. And for a moment, she looked like the 10-year-old girl who used to seek comfort after her mother left. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I was selfish. I was—" "You were exactly who you are," I interrupted. "Nothing more, nothing less. The question is, what do you want now?" Rachel collapsed into the chair across from my desk without invitation. "I need your help," she whispered. And there it was. The real reason for her visit. Not remorse, not love, not a desire to reconcile. She needed something from me again. "Help with what, Rachel?" My voice could have frozen flames. "Everything's gone, Dad. The house, the cars, the partnership, everything. Marcus cleaned me out and disappeared with his paralegal." She laughed bitterly. "Turns out he'd been planning it for 3 years. Moved all our assets offshore. Convinced me to transfer everything into his name for estate planning purposes. I was so blindly trusting, I signed whatever he presented." I listened to Rachel's tale of financial destruction with the same expression I'd use reviewing a particularly boring balance sheet. Marcus had systematically destroyed her, using the same calculating precision he'd once applied to planning his extravagant birthday celebrations. He convinced me to refinance the house again to invest in his college roommate's medical device company, Rachel continued, her voice hollow with shame. "Said we'd triple our investment within a year. The company was completely fabricated. Fake documentation, fake patents, fake investor presentations." "How much did you lose?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew. "Everything. $3.2 million. Our entire net worth, plus what we'd borrowed against future partnership earnings." She looked up at me with bloodshot eyes. "Dad, I'm facing bankruptcy. Criminal investigations. The state bar is reviewing my license. $3.2 million. I did quick mental math, remembering the news coverage of Marcus's birthday party 7 years ago. If they'd had that kind of money to spend then, Rachel's practice had been far more successful than I'd realized. "The paralegal he left with," I said conversationally. How long had that been going on? Rachel's hands clenched into fists. At least 4 years, maybe longer. Brittany Pierce, the woman who helped coordinate his birthday party. They were probably laughing behind my back the whole time, planning this while I was approving payments for ice sculptures and designer invitations. The irony was so exquisite, it was almost poetic. Marcus had used Rachel's money, The money she'd claimed she couldn't spare to save her father's life, to fund his affair, and orchestrate his escape. "Where is he now?" I asked. "Singapore, we believe. No extradition agreement. He transferred everything to shell corporations there." Rachel leaned forward desperately. "Dad, I know I have no right to ask, but I'm drowning. The defense attorneys want $60,000 just to begin building a case. I don't have $60 to my name. $60,000? Less than the cost of my cancer treatment that she'd refused to fund." The cosmic justice was almost too perfect to fully appreciate. "And you thought of me," I mused. "After 7 years of silence, you tracked me down because you need money." "I made a terrible mistake," she said, tears beginning to flow. "The worst mistake of my life. I should have helped you, should have found the money somehow. I was terrified, confused, listening to Marcus instead of my own conscience. You chose your husband over your father," I stated simply. "People make choices, Rachel. They live with consequences." She was crying openly now, the successful attorney facade completely shattered. "I lost everything, Dad. My marriage, my career, my reputation, my savings, everything." "Not everything," I corrected her. "You still have your life. I almost didn't have that luxury, remember?" Rachel looked up sharply, finally understanding what I was telling her. "The cancer treatment worked. You survived." "I survived because I saved myself. I refinanced my condo, paid for my own treatment, and beat cancer without any help from my loving daughter." "I could have lost you forever," she whispered. "You did lose me," I replied. 7 years ago, when you chose 92,000 over your father's life. The man sitting here now, he's someone completely different." Rachel spent the next 90 minutes begging, pleading, promising to change, to be different, to make amends for her betrayal 7 years earlier. I listened with the detached interest of someone watching a moderately entertaining documentary. When she finally exhausted herself, I picked up my phone. "Diana, please bring in the Pierce file." Rachel looked confused. "Pierce? Brittany Pierce? Marcus's paralegal turned business partner? You didn't think I'd allow the woman who helped destroy my daughter to operate in my city without conducting research, did you?" Diana entered with a substantial folder, which I opened with deliberate slowness. "Let's examine what Miss Pierce has been up to since fleeing to Singapore with your husband." Rachel leaned forward, desperate for any information about the woman who'd stolen her life. "Fascinating story, actually. Brittany and Marcus lasted about 8 months before she cleaned him out too. Apparently, she's quite democratic in her theft. She took his half of your money and disappeared to the Cayman Islands. Marcus made it back to the States about 18 months ago, completely broke." Rachel's face went through several expressions, settling on bitter satisfaction. "Good. I hope they both suffer." "Well, Marcus certainly has been struggling. But here's the fascinating part," I continued, pulling out a photograph. "He's been working as a legal consultant here in Austin, at a firm 4 blocks from my office." The color drained from Rachel's face. "You knew? You knew he was here and didn't tell me?" "Why would I tell you anything, Rachel? We haven't spoken in 7 years. As far as I knew, you thought I was dead." I set the photo aside. "But since you're here now, perhaps you'd like to know what else I've discovered." I pulled out another document, thick with legal terminology. Marcus has been quite forthcoming about his time with Brittany. Seems he's willing to testify about her financial crimes in exchange for leniency. Something about forged securities, identity fraud, wire transfers across international boundaries. Rachel grabbed the document with trembling hands. "This could exonerate me. If I can prove Marcus manipulated me, that I was a victim too." "It could," I agreed. "The federal prosecutor handling your case is particularly interested in Marcus's testimony. Apparently, Brittany victimized several other people the same way. You're part of a pattern." Hope flickered in Rachel's eyes for the first time since she'd entered my office. "Dad, how did you obtain this information? How did you even know to investigate?" I smiled, and it wasn't entirely warm. "Rachel, I built a multi-million-dollar wealth management firm from nothing in 7 years. Did you think I accomplished that without learning how to gather intelligence? Multi-million? Her voice was barely audible. I gestured around my office. The business is valued at 5.3 million. My personal portfolio is worth another 4.6. 9.9 million, Rachel. Built from the ashes of the life you and Marcus helped destroy. She stared at me, as if seeing me for the first time. You're wealthy. Genuinely wealthy. I'm successful, I corrected. I'm independent. I'm beholden to no one, and no one can take what I've built away from me. It's a remarkable feeling. Rachel was silent for a long moment, processing everything I'd revealed. The information about Marcus, about Brittany's other victims. You're going to help me? I closed the folder and looked at my daughter, with eyes that had learned to be steel. I'm going to give you a choice, Rachel. The same kind of choice you gave me 7 years ago. Here's your choice, I said, my voice steady as stone. I have sufficient evidence and connections to clear your name entirely. Marcus is willing to testify. I know the federal prosecutor personally, and I have documentation proving Brittany's systematic fraud. I can make your legal problems vanish with a phone call. Rachel's breathing quickened. What do you want in exchange? I want you to understand what it feels like to beg for your life. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a check already made out in her name. $60,000. Enough to pay for your legal defense and help you rebuild. Her eyes locked onto the check like a drowning person seeing a rescue line. But there's a condition, I continued. You have to ask me for it the same way I asked you for help 7 years ago. You have to get on your knees in this office and beg your father to save your life. The silence between us was thick with years of pain and betrayal. Rachel stared at the check, then at me, understanding finally dawning in her eyes. You want me to humiliate myself? I want you to experience what you put me through, I said simply. The desperation, the powerlessness, the knowledge that your future depends entirely on someone else's mercy. Rachel's jaw worked as she wrestled with her pride. And if I refuse? Then you can walk out of here the same way you let me walk out of your life, empty-handed and alone. I held up the file about Marcus. This information disappears with me. The prosecutor never gets her star witness. You face the charges by yourself. For a moment, I thought she might refuse. The old Rachel, the arrogant attorney who'd valued her husband's birthday party over her father's life, would have stormed out in fury. But this broken woman in front of me was learning what true desperation meant. Slowly, Rachel slid from her chair onto her knees beside my desk. Her voice cracked as she spoke. Please, Dad, I'm begging you, save my life. Tears streamed down her face as she continued. I was wrong 7 years ago. I was selfish and heartless, and I failed you when you needed me most. Please don't let me destroy myself the way I almost let you die. I looked down at my daughter, kneeling on the expensive carpet of my corner office, and felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction, but profound sadness. This wasn't the victory I'd imagined. It was just tragedy repeating itself in a different form. Stand up, Rachel. She climbed back into her chair, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I handed her the check and the Marcus file. Your legal problems will be resolved within the month. Marcus's testimony will clear you completely. Why? She whispered. After everything I did to you, why are you helping me? I leaned back in my chair, suddenly feeling every one of my 71 years. Because I learned something about myself when I was fighting cancer alone. I learned that I'm stronger than I ever imagined possible. But I also learned that I don't want to become the kind of person who abandons family when they're desperate. Rachel clutched the check, fresh tears starting. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you. No, I agreed. You don't. But that's not why I'm doing it. 8 months later, Rachel's charges were dismissed. Marcus's testimony had exposed Brittany's entire network of financial fraud, and Rachel was officially classified as a victim rather than a co-conspirator. The state bar restored her license, and she'd started a modest practice specializing in elder law and fraud prevention. She called me every Sunday now, not asking for anything, just connecting. The conversations were still cautious, still healing, but they were authentic in a way our relationship had never been before. We were both transformed people now, shaped by loss and betrayal, and the hard-earned knowledge that love isn't unconditional. "I have something for you," Rachel said during one of our calls. "I've been working on it for months." The following week, she flew to Austin with a cashier's check for $92,000. "It's not enough," she said, handing it to me in my office. "It'll never be enough to compensate for what I did. But it's exactly what I should have given you 7 years ago, plus interest." I looked at the check, then set it aside. "Rachel, I don't need your money anymore." "I know, but I need to give it to you. Not because you need it, but because I need to prove to myself that I'm not the woman who let her father face cancer alone." We talked for hours that day. Really talked for the first time since she was a child. She told me about the depression that had consumed her after Marcus left, the therapy she'd committed to, the slow process of rebuilding her sense of self-worth. I told her about my business, my friends in Austin, the life I'd constructed from nothing. "I'm proud of you," she said as she prepared to leave. "I know I don't have the right to say that, but I'm proud of the man you've become." "I'm proud of the woman you're becoming," I replied. "Not the woman you were, but the woman you're choosing to be now." As I watched her taxi disappear into Austin traffic, I reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought us to this point. 7 years ago, I'd faced death alone because my daughter chose money over my life. Now, she'd lost everything and discovered what genuinely mattered. Not wealth or status or professional connections, but the people who stand by you when everything falls apart. I'd saved myself, built a fortune, and proven I didn't need anyone's rescue. But in the end, the most valuable thing I'd gained wasn't money or success or independence. It was the knowledge that I was strong enough to forgive without forgetting, to help without enabling, and to love without surrendering my self-worth. Some lessons cost everything to learn. Rachel had learned hers. And in teaching it to her, I'd learned something too, that sometimes the most powerful victory isn't defeating your enemies, but showing them a better way to be human. Life had taught her a devastating lesson. I'd taught her an even harder one. But in the end, we'd both learned the hardest lesson of all, that family isn't about blood or obligation, but about choosing to stand by each other, even when it costs everything you have. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to share your own story in the comments. Your voice matters.